The first card I have has some statements on it that I think are very good and add to what I said and clarified some things. Says Siri and the Google equivalent. So with your mic on, your phone listening to your conversation interacts with your browsers to provide content suggestions. So we know our phones listen to us, don't we? All the ads that we get. So certainly that's true. And then the next point here says the lack of personal interaction affects new employees' ability to work efficiently. And we know that's true as well. I've interviewed a lot of people. In my job, I do a variety of roles and have over the years. And it's, a lot of kids today want to be a teacher, have a hard time in an interview, struggle to make eye contact, to shake your hand, to hold on and carry a conversation with someone that they don't know. Obviously, that's a nerve-wracking situation, but we can definitely see that. And I'm speaking from the education perspective because that's what I know to speak from. But that's certainly true and can be very detrimental when we are applying for a job. And so we need to make sure that our kids have the ability to talk to people and interact. And then the final statement here says companies are checking social media more and more as a condition of employment. Well, I know we do, and you'd be foolish not to. And so whatever's out there, whatever you put out there for people to see, they're gonna pay attention to that. So the first card I have here, it says, why do you not let your kids have Snapchat until they're 16? Why in general, and why 16 specifically? So as far as phones go, there is a continuum in my mind of access that we have to be aware of. There are some parents that give their child a phone in second or third grade, and in second or third grade, not only do they have a phone, but they have Facebook, they have Instagram, they have Snapchat at a very, very young age. And we've got to be careful. I think that's foolish. But Snapchat in particular, in my experience as an educator, it's been the most devastating app that I've dealt with. Aaron, would you agree with that? Just in terms of what we've seen from that app. With Snapchat, as I understand, and I don't have it, and I know a lot of adults have it too, but as I understand it, when you send a message, it disappears within a short amount of time. So that in and of itself is very dangerous because that message is no longer going to be there. And so the approach I've taken with my children is to trust but verify. Are they going to have a phone? Yeah, they are at some point. And the point that Aaron made is very true. We have to be very careful about telling our children no to everything and don't let them have anything because we know social media is here to stay. We know phones are here to stay. It's a practical part of all of our lives. There's going to come a time when they're going to have to deal with it. But I'm not going to give it to them all at once. I'm not going to throw them a phone and say, do whatever you want to with it. We're going to start with the phone. And they're not going to have, at least my rule, they're not going to have any social media. And then I'm going to see how that goes. They're going to be able to make phone calls. They're going to be able to text. They're going to be able to have the internet to some extent with parental controls. And we've got some of the same things, and I'm sure most other parents in here do, that Aaron talked about. Live 360 is wonderful. On the way down here, Landon text Danielle and said, tell Dad he's driving 83 and a 70. So they can monitor us too. And that's good. We have to do that. But why 16 specifically? Again, it's about a continuum. How mature are they? How mature is a 13 or 14-year-old or 15-year-old? Again, our rule has been 7th grade, 13. And I wouldn't say, there's some studies that say wait till 8th. You may have seen some of that, wait till 8th grade to get a smartphone. I think that's partially based on what Aaron talked about with the age of 14 and getting through that middle school age and just in general more maturity. But I think you have to take a gradual approach. After they have a phone, if they don't have any problems and they trust but verify, right? After a while, after they've done well with that, no major issues, give a little more freedom. Start with a social media account. Start with Facebook. I guess that's not cool for kids to have that. I don't know. Start with Instagram. Let them do Insta, right? See how they do with that. So whenever Landon got in high school, I let him have Instagram. And they did well. We didn't have any issues with that. So when he turned 16, I let him have Snapchat. So really for us, it was more about giving them an opportunity, giving them a taste, seeing how they do, trusting them with it, with limitations, and then progressing from there. Next question. If we raise our kids with tablets, advice on quitting resetting their minds. I don't know that you can reset their minds. Our devices are going to be with us. So what I would suggest is not taking anything away stone cold. I'm not suggesting that. Now, I said that about service, and I absolutely believe that's true. I don't see a need for it here. You may disagree. But set parameters. Limit use is what I would suggest. Don't take away their tablet completely, but maybe there's a period of time that you let them have their tablet. Maybe for an hour. When our kids were younger, there would be certain days of the week that they got access to video games. I didn't talk about video games much tonight, but we know that's a problem too. I'd let them play video games maybe for a couple hours on Saturday, or maybe let them look at their tablet on another day of the week. So I think parameters is the way to go. And so if you want to cut back on that, I think that's wise. Set parameters. Maybe set certain times of the day or certain times of the week. And maybe it's not just them not looking, maybe it's the whole family does that. That's probably a better approach rather than just saying you can't have this. We as a family during this time, during this 2-hour block, we're not going to have access to a screen or to a device. So that's the advice I would give on that. Can you say more about the apps that get around parental control? Well, I don't know if there's an app that gets around parental control. In our school system, we've got a proxy that blocks everything, a filter system that blocks a lot of things, but there's kids that get around that. Your kids know more about technology probably than you do. And while there are some great things out there, your child may not know a way around it, but there are ways around those things. So again, it's not that there's an app. Let me give you an example. So last year in our district, I'm going to talk more about substance abuse tomorrow night, but I'm chairperson of our local Unite Coalition. It's a group of parents and leaders in the community that try to prevent drug abuse. We do a lot of preventative programs. We also have programs for treatment and addiction, get people into treatment centers and all kinds of things. It's a really good organization. But one of the things that we did in my role with the school, I was able to secure some grant funding to buy some vape detectors for our schools. So we put vape detectors in our middle school bathrooms and our high school bathrooms. And of course, you don't know. It's not like older days when, a kid would be smoking in the bathroom. You knew they were smoking in the bathroom. Somebody smokes a joint. I'm getting on my subject for tomorrow night. They're smoking a joint, right? You can smell it. Well, you can't smell a vape. Maybe for a moment, but it dissipates very quickly. So those vape detectors can detect that vape. And we thought, man, this is awesome. This is great. Well, there's ways around them. And, kids began to look on YouTube and find ways around those detectors. Now, they're still pretty effective. But there's ways around them. So, again, I say don't be naive. Don't be naive and don't put all your trust in one method of blocking content. Not saying it's not good. I'm not saying you shouldn't have it. It's an obstacle. I would have those things. We have those things to try to prevent access. But just realize that there are ways around those. Rebellion is a plea for connection. It's a quote on this card. How can we help the kids in our congregation who are not getting healthy connections at home? Well, I think there's several aspects to that. We do need to teach from the pulpit on parenting, on what does it mean to be a godly father and a godly mother, and what are family responsibilities. That's something I think that we could do more of. I know at our congregation we could do more of that. That's one very basic thing, teaching the importance of relationships. Now, I don't know about this specific instance. I don't know if this is speaking of a kid that comes whose parents maybe aren't faithful, or who comes with a grandparent, or maybe a child that just comes whose parent doesn't have a connection to the church, or whose parent is a faithful member. So I don't have that context for this question. So I'm kind of shooting from the hip in that instance. But if there's a specific incident of a child who you don't feel has a healthy connection, maybe talk to that parent, as Aaron mentioned. And that doesn't have to be a confrontational. conversation. It shouldn't be. Again, as he quoted Galatians 6:2, we approach one another in a spirit of meekness. And one thing that I have learned, and learned this the hard way, is asking questions. It's one of the reasons I put focus questions on here, because asking questions causes you and me to evaluate what we're doing. So maybe ask some questions, probing questions of that parent who you feel like whose child is not getting a healthy connection. And if the parent's not involved, maybe you provide that connection for that child, however that you can. Maybe you invite them to go to a meeting in another congregation with your family. Maybe you invite them to go on a fishing trip with you. Maybe you invite them to go shopping with you. You try to make that connection.
About 3 minutes more.
Okay. Can you address the importance of parents' use of their phone and how this affects their children who are watching and modeling their behavior? For example, the child sees their parent on the phone all the time, and so the child acts like their parent by being on the phone all the time too. We have to set the example. That's just bottom line. And I've not done a great job with that. I think I'm getting a little better as I've learned with my first child. You know, we learn a lot with our first child. I think I've got better, but we've got to do that. We've got to set the example with all of our children. Make it, as I said, make it a family commitment. Not something that you say, you're not going to have your phone anymore. You're not going to have your video game for this amount of time. You do without your phone. You turn that TV off. You get off your tablet. And as a family, plan things, do things. I think that's the best suggestion I would have.